Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here in Tallinn. It's actually my first time, and I was triggered when I was invited here. My name is Eja Pedersen. I come from Sweden, and unfortunately, I don't speak your language. I'm very sorry for that, and I never think I'm going to try either. So I will speak in English, and I think you have handouts, so you can read the slides anyhow. I did write a book for it's just a brieflet for the environmental, the Swedish Environmental Protection Agency, who takes care about with some of the noise in Sweden. And this has very nicely been translated, so you can get your own copy in Estonian. It's outside there, so you can read about this afterwards if you don't follow what I say. I'm also very pleased to be in this environment here. I like this figure here with the lamp and the green tree there. I'm actually, from the beginning, an environmental engineer. And I got into science, environmental science, in the 1990s. And I was working at the university. And we were starting to put up wind turbines in Sweden in the beginning of the 1990s. And someone came to me and asked, can you do an environmental impact assessment for these wind turbines that we are going to put up? And I said, sure, that must be really easy, you know. And it was very easy to calculate how beneficial these wind turbines are. They reduce carbon dioxide, of course. And also, I really like wind turbines because if we find some better technique for electricity generating, then we can just take them down. We don't have to store anything for thousands of years. And the landscape will be back again from what it was before. But then when I came to the part when I was going to write about the impact on nature, but also the impact on people living close to these wind turbines. As a scientist, I wanted proof about what I wrote, but there were no studies. Nobody knew what was the impact on the people living close to these wind turbines. So that's when I started this research, and it's more than 10 years now that I've been just researching wind turbine noise. Maybe it sounds strange for you, but it's a very interesting area. It has all different aspects. And we also have conferences now on wind turbine noise. So if you want to know more, you can go to Rome in Italy in April. We will have the 4th conference that just deals with wind turbine noise. It has so many aspects. So this conference was very nicely arranged. I want to thank people for that. But you were very optimistic with the program here, putting so many speakers in. And I think you long for coffee. But you just have to listen to me a little bit. The wind turbines in these 10 years have really increased. No, that doesn't work.
Visual contact to the mouse.
Visual contact to the mouse.
No, to the other mouse.
To the other mouse. Oh, here's another one. So if I do it like this, do you think it will work? Okay, I'll just... Oh, thank you. So it has really increased the wind turbines. You can see it's exponential, actually. This is the global installed effect. And we know that Estonia, for example, have recently got a lot of new wind farms, wind turbines here. Otherwise, the leading countries in Europe are Spain, Denmark, and Germany. Denmark actually has quite a large part of their electricity from wind turbines. Sweden was had a low start, and we still are not amongst the 10 highest countries. We have so much hydropower, you know, so that's not so much need. Globally, China is now leading the race, but also India and United States are large wind turbine nations. It's good for me. All these need to do legislation, you know. So they send me email and I get a lot of work. Yes. So what are the research questions? Well, these are the questions I've been dealing with for 10 years. How do residents close to wind turbine perceive the noise, actually? And does wind turbine noise pose a risk for lowered well-being or even impaired health? If so, what factors moderate the adverse effect? And I did add another question. The last question came later in my research. Also, what is so special with wind turbine noise? What is the big deal? People are complaining, people are afraid of it, people, well, they just don't want this wind turbine noise. But what is so special with it? We have noise in the society everywhere. So, I've done a couple of epidemiological studies, large studies, 2 in Sweden and 1 in the Netherlands for the European Commission. And there are quite simply, like we have wind turbines like this. This is 2 wind turbines. We calculate the sound propagation so that we get one measurement one calculated level, sound level, for each house around these levels. Then we send out questionnaires, and these questionnaires are not about wind turbines, because we don't want to have their opinion on wind turbines. We want to establish the health factors. So we ask about they are called to live in the countryside, or they are called to live in your village, or something like that. And we ask all different kind of questions about the schools and the roads. And in between are questions about wind turbines. And we hope that they are not smart enough to understand that this is a wind turbine study, because we don't want people to just say that they are annoyed by the noise just because they don't like the developers or something like that. So I'm going to show you some results from this. The first question is, of course, how easy is it to hear these wind turbines? They're just swishing. It has this little swishing sound. Up and up? No. So this is a dose response curve, like the one Maya showed, but this is from, here we have the sound levels. And here is if they ever hear the sound from the wind turbines. And you see it's a very nice dose-response level relationship here. The louder sound levels, more percentages hear the sound. And around here somewhere, 40 dBA, we have 80% or more that can hear the sound. And if you look at these levels, they are quite much lower than the ones Maria showed. These are dBA levels. And so the wind turbine is heard, even though it's not that high levels. I will go into that a little bit later. What about annoyance? Because to hear it is no problem, is it? It's annoyance that is the problem. And there we go. Well, we see it's not that big problem, actually. We have some people here that say that they're annoyed, but you will always have some people that will answer that, even if there is no wind turbine. But then something happens here. It started to increase the percentages of people that are annoyed. And the legislation or the recommendations in Sweden is 40 dBA. And these, of course, must reflect a special condition. You cannot just take, what do you mean by 40 dBA? Well, the standard, and that is also international, is when it's blowing 8 meters per second at 10 meters height by the wind turbine, downwind from the turbine to the dwelling. And was there any more conditions on that? No. Yes, that's the legislation. So it's just when it's blowing 8 meters per second that this represents the value at that time. Because wind turbines, their noise is created instantaneously dependent on the wind speed. So it just, sometimes it's 40 dBA, sometimes it's 35, sometimes it's something else. So that is one thing. This is just for one weather condition. We have some things that moderates this, and the most visibility. If you see the wind turbine, it's more likely that you can also hear it, and that is not so strange, maybe. Yeah, I'll go into the next picture because there we have the annoyance instead. Here you have the annoyance. What is likely to increase annoyance? Well, if you also see the wind turbine, you are more at risk at also being annoyed by the wind turbine. So why could that be? Well, it could be that when we have two senses triggered at the same time, when we have the hearing and we have the sights, we have this turning from the wind turbine, like this, and also the noise creates a higher tension in your body, and you get more easily annoyed. So it's called a multimodal effect. And we can see here that if you live in a rural area, and most wind turbines are placed quite rural, where you have low background sounds and maybe very nice scenery, the risk is also higher. It doesn't seem like there is any consequence of living in a flat landscape or a hilly one, but I guess here in Estonia you don't have to bother about the difference between hilly or flat as we do in Sweden. Then we have all these individual factors, and Maja talked a lot about noise sensitivity, and here there is no difference with wind turbine noise than other community noise. If you rate yourself as noise sensitive, and we used exactly the same question as Maria showed you with the self-rating of noise sensitive, then you have a higher risk of being annoyed. It's like any noise, actually. Then also, if you have a negative attitude to the noise source, it's known that you are also more easily get annoyed. What is different with the wind turbine is that it seems like the visual annoyance. Do we have that? Yes. The visual annoyance, the attitude to the impact of wind turbines on the landscape has even a higher, risk for being annoyed by the noise. If you think they're ugly, if you think they are wrongly placed, if they don't look nice in the landscape, then you will also get irritated by the noise. So this is special for wind turbines, I think. Now, of course, we don't know. We don't know. Do you first think that they are ugly, and then you get annoyed by the noise? Or are you first annoyed by the noise, and then you think, oh, they are so ugly, you know? We don't know. Where does it all start? Now, this is a conference on health, so we need to deal with the health factors here. We did relate the levels, the sound levels, directly to different health factors. We took the ones that Maria were talking about that we know could be a risk for environmental noise, but we didn't find any relationship with long-term disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, tinnitus, impaired hearing, headache, undue tiredness, stress symptoms. Nothing of this was directly related to the noise levels. But what was? We can see, this is the two Swedish studies and a Dutch study. We can see being disturbed in the sleep by a noise source. We have all these people being disturbed in the sleep by a noise source. The most common one, do you know what the most common one is to be disturbed by? Nobody? Snoring from the one who's sleeping next to you, huh? That's the most annoying. Okay, but we should, if wind turbines would not trouble, we should have the same levels all the way here. But you see what happens? It goes up a little bit, just where we have the higher noise levels of wind turbine noise. This is the first Swedish study we did, and this is the Netherlands study, the Dutch study. So it might be something there. And these are people living in the countryside, and of course they are used to sleeping with the window open. In Sweden it's very common, and in Finland of course, and also in the Netherlands in our studies we found out it's common to sleep with the window open in the summer if you live in the countryside. I don't know if that is a human right to sleep with your window open, but I like it also, so I think it is. Here, now, I said there were no direct link between the noise levels and these different symptoms, health symptoms. But if you look at the link between annoyance, and Maya said annoyance could be like an intermediator or something between the levels and the symptoms. And we see here that between annoyance and these different things, we can find indications that annoyance and what I would call stress symptoms of different kind has a connection. Once again, we don't know, do people that are under stress, are they more at risk of being noise annoyed, or are they first noise annoyed and then they get stressed? We don't know about that. So here is the same curves actually as Maria showed. She talked about that aircraft noise is more annoying than road traffic noise and railway noise, and we have industry here. And here I plotted the values from the studies in the Netherlands with confidence intervals, and we see that wind turbine noise seemed to be even more annoying than aircraft noise. Here we have something that is called shunting yards, and that is based only on 1 or 2 studies. That's where they connect the trains at night. Yes. So we see, even though this is not a big public health issue, it is something with wind turbine noise that makes it an annoying noise. So why is it annoying? Well, how many have heard a wind turbine? Oh, good, then I don't have to explain. So many people have heard a wind turbine noise. It goes something like that, swishing. And it is due to, this could be like 100 meters, 90 meters is most common now. And you have these, maybe it's 45 meters. So it's quite a large construction. And what happens? Well, the wind speed when the rotor blade is here is different from the wind speed when it's up here. And this difference gives a different sound. So that's why the amplitude, the strength of the sound goes up and down all the time. And also, when the rotor blade passes the tower, you get a different sound. So that's why it's fluctuating all the time like this. It's called amplitude modulated sound. And that means that it's not masked by background sound. If you have other wind-induced sounds from bushes and trees that are even, that will not mask this wind turbine sound because of this amplitude modulation. You say that the background sound need to be at least 6 dB higher to have any masking effects. And even though as this sound fluctuates all the time, it is not masking. We have this unpredictable occurrence of the sound that makes it very difficult to habituate to. If you live too close to a road, as I do myself, it's not a very busy road, but when I wake up in the morning, I can tell if it's a weekday or if it's Sunday, because I can hear on the sound from the traffic, okay, it's Sunday today, that's fine. Next morning it's Monday, we have a little bit more heavy traffic. The traffic's heavy in the morning, in the afternoon, not so much in the evening, and not so much at night. And you get used to this pattern. You know when there is going to be a sound. Well, the sound from wind turbines, that differs all the time. It directly linked to the wind. And you know the wind is blowing strongly one day, less strong another day. If you're going to have a barbecue in your garden Saturday night with your friends, really sunny Saturday night, you sit in the garden, you don't know, is it going to be a quiet night or is it going to be a noisy night from the wind turbine? And this unpredictable thing makes it worse. And also, of course, there are people that live in the countryside that are used to just what we call natural sound, and that could you say it's wind-induced sound in bushes and trees and maybe some birds. We heard a person here before say that birds were loud, and you should complain about that, but I don't think so. You are used to these natural background sounds. And here comes this technical sound. It is a machine, you know, it's a generator in there. So maybe it triggers something in you. Difficulties in estimations of sound levels. Well, you cannot measure these wind turbines all the time. And what do you do before you put them up? There were some really nice sound propagation models outside here that you could look at. But we thought we needed to look into that a little bit more. So we put a measurement. You see how advanced equipment we have here is when we don't go on vacation, we use it as a measurement wagon. We put up our measurements here and we measured not just by the wind turbine, because that is done all the time. You measure by the wind turbine. We measured 500 meters. We pretended that someone was living there and we wanted to see what happens. And we measured for a month. We recorded 1 minute pieces every full hour, 10 times every full hour, for 24 hours for 30 days. So we had very many small pieces of measurements and recordings. And of course, what we wanted to do was to test different sound propagation models to see which one predicted the sound best. Well, it turned out there is no really difference in the sound propagation models. So we just stuck to the Swedish standard model that is like any model in this case. And first I show you the frequency here, spectra, because if there are any people here that are interested in noise, you will otherwise ask me that when there are question times. So here is the frequency spectra, here is the unweighted spectra, and here is the A-weighted spectra. So, did it fit the sound propagation model? Well, we needed to be sure that we had recorded the wind turbine and nothing else, so we had to listen to these recordings to take out those that were not infected by a barking dog, an aircraft coming over, or some other strange sounds that we still don't know what they are. So we found only recordings that we are sure that are not infected by anything else. And we see these are the recordings, and here we have the average, the mean values for every integer wind speed here, and the confidence intervals. And here are the calculated values. And we see that they fit quite well. Actually, this probably represents the background levels in this area. And when the wind increases, the sound increases. And I said the standard is to use 8 meters per second. So if that standard was used where we had placed the measurement wagon, then the developers would say it's 35 dBA there. Now, what is interesting is the large difference here. You see it varies very largely here. Even if we find an average that is close to the measurement, people who live here will, of course, also hear it when it's this measurement here. You see? And maybe they will perceive it as louder than we thought when we said 40 dBA is a fine measurement. So why could this be? Well, we used all our best statistics, and we tried this parabolic equation model where you can use the weather factors also. But we actually turned out with why this is that the wind changes faster than the wind turbine reacts. So the wind turbine should not change its speed immediately when the wind changes, because then it will change all the time, and that's not good when you're going to generate electricity. So when the wind increases very short time, the sound will be louder from the wind turbine than calculated. Can you pour me some water? Oh, thank you. Well, we're good in time. Okay, we have 10 minutes more before coffee. Now, my interest has shifted from the wind turbine technique to the people. So I asked myself, what is it like to live close to this wind turbine? I live in a wind turbine area myself, but not that close. So we did a qualitative study where we interviewed people, and we tried to find people who, at the same sound level, said, well, I'm not at all annoyed, I don't bother, it's no problem. And at the same sound level said, I'm very annoyed, I'm thinking about moving away from here, I cannot stand it any longer. And we got all different answers. How is it to live close to a wind turbine? And I think this is translated in your papers. I saw it as a positive development. We didn't have any wind turbines here, and because of that, we didn't know what they were. Then we got to know that it meant that every time you went in the garden or looked in that direction, it was spinning. It just spins and spins. It gets irritating. And here was a man in his 50s who said, I drive wheel loaders and trucks. There's plenty of bang and bonk all day long. You know, a garage. When I turn everything off for the night and hear that wind turbine, it's enough to drive you crazy. It never goes away. You go mad. It's sort of like that. It's always there. You get used to it to some degree, but when you go out in your garden on a Saturday and you hear it, you get so angry at that sound that you end up being angry at everything. Do you understand what I'm saying? It will drive you crazy. So these are just two of the people we interviewed. And we came up with a model for what is going on here. And we saw that people have different expectations of the living environment. And I think maybe people in Estonia and Sweden and Finland have sort of the same expectations of the living environment. It is different in India or in Hong Kong or something. Then you have another expectation. But you can either be think that the land where you live, the area where you live, the village or the rural area, should be a place where you can develop, you can have economical growth. Maybe you're a farmer, you expand your farm, you buy more cows or whatever. And if that is so, then you think that, well, I want to have progress in my community. I want to drive my big tractor. I want to get even a bigger tractor. Then you say, well, I don't care what my neighbor do. He can put up a wind turbine if he wants to. It's no bother to me. He can do what he wants to do. And it's just nice that we get more money into this area. But then we have other people who expect peace and quiet, who want to rest from the stressy lives. Maybe they work in the city. They invest in a house in the countryside. They go there even in the weekends or every day if they commute. And of course, they don't want any technical devices. They don't want any disturbing noise. They have chosen this place because it was nice and peace and quiet and maybe looked very nice. These people will sort of think of the noise as intrusion into the private sphere. they, you know, noise, it doesn't bother about fences and things like that. You put up a fence around your garden so people wouldn't understand that this is my private area. But the noise doesn't care about that. It just goes right into your garden. And this could be worsened by 4 different aspects. One is what I talked about before, not having control on when the noise is coming and not being able to turn it off. I mean, you can turn off most of your noises at home, but not this one. Not having any influence when they are put up. Often people are asked the neighbors to give their view on these wind turbines during the environmental impact assessment process, but maybe even if they're asked, maybe they think that they didn't have a saying in this. It was all arranged beforehand. They think it's unfair. This neighbor has this wind turbine, and now you can make quite a lot of money from wind turbines. The neighbor will make the money, I get the noise. That's not fair, is it? And also, they feel that they are not believed. Here come these people, and they say, I'm so annoyed, I can't stand it. And the authorities maybe say, well, what is the levels? Well, it's 35, 40 dBA. Well, we have much more problem with aircraft and road traffic, and well, we cannot deal with these low levels, and you shouldn't be annoyed. Nobody's annoyed at those low levels. They feel that they are not believed. So here is sort of an overview of the research area right now, and this I put in because I want more people to get into this research. We are very much too few. We have the sound from wind turbines, and already there's a lot of things to do. We know how it is created now, but still there are so many mysteries for acoustical people to get into there. This high source is, of course, special, and it's the sound propagation is, for example, influenced by the atmosphere, if we have stable atmosphere and other things like that. So that's a very interesting research area. We have some knowledge, but not so much. Then, of course, we now know that it could be affect sleep maybe, and annoyance for sure. We have the stress factors, and we know about the visibility, how they we should look into more how they can be placed in the landscape to avoid negative visual impact. And we have the individual factors, noise sensitivity, attitude. We have these expectations that is not researched so much that I also think it's important to get into. So please welcome everybody into this research area. And there's a lot to do, I tell you that. All countries are working on their regulations now. Last, I wanted to remember you about the WHO's health definition. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And that was already stated in 1948. Thank you so much for your attention. I will be here all day, also by the coffee and lunch, and I'd be very nice to please approach me with discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Eja. Kas kellelgi on paar kiiret küsimust võib-olla enne, kui me kohvipausile läheme? Jah, seal taga. Ja öelge siis palun oma küsimus mikrofoni sisse, siis kuulevad tõlgid ka.
I cannot hear you.
Öelge palun mikrofoni sisse. All on nupp on-off, ilmsesti. Ei veel ei ole.
Kas see väide on tõene, et tuule kiirusel üle 8 meetrit sekundis prevaleerub taustamüra?
No translation here. Can you translate it? Can you translate it for me?
Is it true that when the wind blows more than 8 meters in a second,
Oh, I understand the question. You wonder if it's true that you cannot hear the wind turbine when the wind blows more than 8 meters per second. Is that your question?
Korrake küsimust, palun.
Kas see väide on tõene, et tuule kiirusel üle 8 meetrit sekundis prevaleerub taustamüra?
If the wind blows more than 8 meters in a second, then the background noise is getting...
It was true before, you know, because the wind turbine was only 45 meters high or something like that, and the wind speed at the wind turbine would be approximately the same as at the ground. So you will have wind in the bushes and the trees. Nowadays, the wind turbines are so tall, they are very high. So maybe you have no wind on the ground, but you still have wind up there, you see? So you will have a bigger difference in between. So there are more occasions where you can hear the wind turbine because you are living sheltered or you are no wind where you live, but you still have a wind by the wind turbine, especially if the wind turbine is placed on a hill like this. So I think we should consider not only 8 meters per second, but also maybe 10 meters per second. Overall, we should give a better description of the sound when we develop wind turbine farms, not just one figure. We should tell what the noise would be like for 6 meters per second, 8 meters, 10 meters, and also what happens during a year. Do we have stable atmosphere in this area that will increase the sound, or do we have normal atmosphere? Things like that. So it should be a more comprehensive description.
Kas kellelgi on veel küsimusi?
Mul on teine küsimus ka veel seoses selle vastusega, et kas teie mudel arvestab siis ka ülemiste labade poolt tekitatud müra?
Ja paluks tõlkidel korra veel see inglise keelde üle tõlkida.
Nobody is speaking English here.
Kas see teie müra arvutusmudel arvestab ka ülemiste labade poolt tekitatud müra?
Yeah.
I think you asked if it takes into account the noise at the upper blades or the lower blades. It is an estimation. What you do is you measure close to the wind turbines, and the sound from the wind turbine is considered sound from one point in the, at the hub. And you calculate the distance from the hub to from where you measure. So it's not lowest or highest, it's one value for the whole machine. And it's maybe you stand, when you're going to measure the emission levels, the sound power level from the wind turbine, you stand close to the wind turbine and do the measurements, and it's considered like one point. You don't do different measurements from different parts. Was that maybe answer to that question? I think everybody wants coffee now, don't you? Yes, exactly, says this man. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.